Oh boy, this is the one we've been waiting for. If you're into mechs, then you've been waiting for this game since at least 2016, and if you're not, then it's very likely that you would at least be interested in what the creators of Elden Ring are cooking. Now, Armored Core is an old series that kind of ran dry after 2012, where FromSoftware shifted their focus on the Souls formula. So before we go and engulf ourselves in the fires of Rubicon, what is Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon? Well, the quick stuff, this is an action third-person shooter where you build and pilot a mech. You have jump jets and lasers and laser swords. There we go, that'll do for now, right? We'll come back to this a little later. A lot of the backstory for our character is unknown. All we know is that we have Gen 4 augmentations that improve our abilities as a pilot, but it comes with some potential problems. We have a handler named Walter who manages the logistics of our operations, but we are very much on a need-to-know basis, and we don't even know what Walter wants on Rubicon, so we don't know very much. So anyways, the game starts by being launched from orbit into Rubicon, where we scavenge wrecked mercenary cores so we can steal their ID and assume their identity. After the first mission, we succeed in this, and then we have the call sign Raven, and from this point on, we are a mercenary for hire. But that's our character. What about Rubicon 3? Simply put, everyone is after a MacGuffin substance called coral substance, energy. If this was a fantasy game, you would call it ether or mana, but it's pretty much what it is. The point is that coral revolutionized human life, but like all good things, it has to blow up, doesn't it? What, you thought you weren't going to be exploring a dying world in a FromSoftware game? Amateurs. Anyways, the planet and the entire solar system was engulfed in flames. Someone took a smoke break too close to the coral or something. The point is that it's powerful stuff, and clearly humans didn't know what they were doing with it. Our story takes place 10 years later. The planet is essentially desolate, but major corporations are all rearing to get back on the planet to survey the surface to see if they can get their hands on some of the good stuff. We're at the point in humanity where the procurement of assets is far more important than something silly like the value of human life or anything like that. So corporations will hire mercenaries and maintain their own substantial armed forces to protect their interests. This means there's a lot of work for a merc. Which brings us full circle back to our participation. After the first mission, you build and pilot your very own armored core. Ultimately, you are there to destroy things. We are piloting a weapon, so as you can imagine, most of your missions are, hey, kill these people, destroy this thing, protect this thing, which is just kill the other people. But the joy is in the how. How do I kill them? And do I look good when I'm doing it? Armored Core 6, straight out of the gates, differentiates you as an augmented pilot of an armored core from the standard in military forces. You are way faster, your guns are way better, your guidance systems are better, and you are better. Most engagements are like, incoming AC, take it out, followed by, hey, so fast, ah! And then explosions. Armored cores have legs, but if you see the running animation, you're doing it wrong. Armored Core 6, like its predecessors, is all about movement, and you have boosters that you will use indefinitely so long as you are attached to the ground. Once you leave the ground, you start losing energy, but you can stay up there for quite a while. If that's not enough, you can quickly dash on top of this boost, which will drain energy, and then there is a third level of boost called Assault Boost, which will allow you to cover great distance. This makes missiles seem slow. Assault boosting drains your energy fairly quickly, but it can also be used to great effect offensively. Just don't miss. I started with the movement because Armored Core 6 is so focused on movement that aiming is mostly done for you, so long as you can keep your quarry on screen. The shooting in this game is not very much shooting in the traditional sense because frankly the game doesn't want you to stop and mess around with it. The shooting is far more concerned with the when of firing a weapon. For example, bazookas and grenade launchers can do a lot of damage, but are you going to hit another armored core with any of these weapons if you just fire them? Probably not. Other armored cores are also fast and have the same abilities as you have, so you have to try and catch them out on a mistake rather than just hoping for the best. Now, I said that you're way faster and stronger than your opponents, but that's not always true. If you're facing things like MTs or drones, MT stands for muscle tracers by the way, these are mechs that have been superseded by armored cores, it's like John Deere rising up against an M1 Abram. But you're not the only mercenary, and corporations have their own armored cores, and you will run into those from time to time. Not to mention that there are a few boss encounters that will really test your abilities. The when of firing also gets deeper, since some targets have shields and certain weapons, energy weapons for example, are more effective than kinetic weapons for shields. Also, there's a stagger mechanic. Basically score enough damage in a short enough space of time and your opponent's mech will overload and shut down, making everything that you fire cause critical damage. Most encounters with other armored cores, and especially bosses, are about maintaining pressure to open them up to these staggers, where you can fire your big cool, unreliable but cool big dick cannon that does giga damage. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that the fun in the gameplay doesn't jump out at you like it would in the traditional sense of an FPS game. In fact, it can feel detached and basic to start off with, because the enemies seem to die no matter what buttons you press. All the aiming is done for you, they aren't really moving, and you are under very little pressure to evade. I think it would be easy to be turned off by it if you don't get to explore the depths that the game has to offer. Okay, gameplay is cool and all, but real mech games require two things to be classified as such. One is a diagnosable attention to mech building customization, and the other is the ability to paint your mech and attach your own decals. If you don't have these two things, it's a fake mech game. Sorry, not sorry. I'm happy to report that 9 out of 10 doctors agree that Armored Core 6 is diagnosed with both of these conditions. Let's start with the painting. I found this to be very intuitive. There's a ton of presets if you are lost for ideas, although I recommend the Buzz Lightyear scheme. Can't really shake a stick at that one. You can choose a design scheme for your entire armored core, or apply different schemes to different parts of the mech, or perhaps you just want the weapons and the frame to be separate. There's options for that too. Even the reflective properties of the material and the weathering can be adjusted, and frankly I find it glorious. It may look intimidating at first glance, but it really is less work than a Korean MMO character creator. Now, you start with some decals, which can be placed on various parts of your armored core, but you will earn more through defeating other armored cores, or you can upload your own image and go from there. This was a cool feature in Armored Core 2, and it's a cool feature now. Will most people make use of it? Probably not. But, I love that it's there. Customizing your armored core is laid out in a simple manner that is easy to follow, even if the screen and stats seem a little intimidating at first. Most of your parts you are going to need to buy from the shop, and the shop expands as you progress through the game, giving you more options. So the basics are you're going to need a head, a torso, arms, legs, power generator, booster, FCS, that's your targeting module, and then you have 4 weapon mounting points to play with. These being your 2 hands and your 2 shoulder mounts. Buying a gun for your left hand is not the same as buying one for your right, as in you can't swap a gun that you bought for your left hand to the right hand slot. Don't panic though, Armored Core 6 is very lenient in its buying and selling, since every part buys and sells for the same price. Meaning it's not very difficult to completely replace your armored core with another of a similar value and lose nothing in the process. Don't forget to do tutorials, because these also give you free parts. Now, I think it's natural to assume that hands are usually dedicated to your staple guns and melee weapons that you use on a regular basis. Shoulder points are more for the special weapons and missiles, though there are a few exceptions here and there. I just want to take a moment here to appreciate how much the melee options have improved in comparison to other Armored Core games. This spike thing is ripped straight out of Front Mission 3, and I love that game, and I love that it's here too. Essentially, melee weapons boil down to high risk, high reward gameplay, but they also tend to add a little bit of extra movement, which is always handy because they can be used for a little bit of extra mobility at a stretch. Back to customization, I think it's pretty intimidating looking at all the numbers on the screen and stats, but you can pretty safely ignore a lot of them and just play it by feel. The main things are AP, which is your health. Once you reach 0 AP, you die. You have 3 repair kits that you can use through missions to heal your armored core. You don't need high AP, but it's a good stat to be aware of. The other 2 stats that are essential are current load and current EN load. These are essentially little graphs that show you your current weight in relation to your max, and then your energy load in comparison to your maximum output. What am I saying here? You need to be not too fat and have enough energy. If you satisfy the conditions of being under max weight and under max energy load, then your armored core is good to go. Honorable mention goes to boost speed because, you know, it's how fast you go, and that's pretty important to the game. Now, this is just a crash course, though I honestly feel like a lot of the other stats you can just play and see how you feel about it. Once you establish a problem with your current armored core, you can go back and look at the stat to fix it, and then from there, the other stats will start to fall in place naturally. Also, really helps that every part you look at shows you how it changes things, so the game really goes out of its way to help you make informed decisions. If you take anything away from this, it's that the stats aren't the most important thing in the game, and they will fall into place naturally as you problem solve your armored core into the killing machine that you deserve. Now, I think I've talked a lot about the already known selling points of Armored Core 6, but I think an aspect that is underappreciated is the immersion and story delivery. It's easy to overlook the story because, well, it's bare bones, but the mystery of you and Walter and the Coral are closely guarded throughout the story with breadcrumbs stringing you along. And yeah, I know that we are basically just listening to audio logs, but that's why I mentioned the immersion aspect. I wouldn't expect to see any of these characters face to face in this world setting. Seeing a corporation's logo talk down to me in a futuristic Zoom meeting is exactly what I'd expect, and it keeps you wondering about the character behind the microphone, even if you only get slithers here and there. Now, there's something to be said about the dehumanization of the whole affair. Everyone is just a logo and a voice. The low value of life is heavily emphasized, and your only value is what you provide to your employer at the time. Like, it's not uncommon to destroy a corporation facility and then have the same corporation hire you to destroy another corporation's facility without any repercussions for your prior actions, because after all, it's just good business. Walter refers to you by the number 621 and everyone else calls you Walter's dog. Most Armored Core pilots are heavily in debt or on the verge of insanity thanks to their augmentations. This is not a happy world. The human race at this point sees a moral compass the same way Zoomers see a 3.5-inch floppy disk. They threw that thing away a long time ago, but occasionally you see glimmers of humanity in some of the characters and you cling to it for dear life and hope that they don't die. I think there are some characters that are very interesting and I wanted to learn more about them as I played the game. I was also drawn to the mystery of the coral. Like, what is it? Why did it engulf the solar system in flames? The story toys with these questions. The voice acting is good. I think the guy that speaks for Balaam could calm down a little, but overall, I think Walter and Carla are some of the standouts. Damn, that one time Rusty says, "I won't miss," before firing the railgun is so badass. Now I'm going to expose myself and mech players. I think it's a dirty kink that we have, that we're kind of addicted to people dying in radio chatter. And that happens here too, so we're good. Really feeds the ego, but it also does a good job of selling the stakes. An example of this is when you do a mission for a corporation and the Planetary Closure Administration shows up with warships and everyone starts panicking as lasers decimate the terrain. It really feels like you're in over your head, and I think this aspect is expertly handled while not being overused. Now look, I'm kind of revealing my FromSoftware hipsterdom at this point, and obviously I find this more hands-off approach appealing, but I'm aware that there are a lot of people that like to be wined and dined with the show, and if you're looking for that here, then you're going to be a little disappointed at what Armored Core 6 brings to the table. Let's talk about graphics for a bit. When I was watching footage for this game on stream, I had a lot of people remark that the graphics were nothing special. This is somewhat true, but also a little bit reductive. FromSoftware has always implemented graphics that I would describe as functionally pretty, and it's no different here. What I mean by this is that they aren't going to win any awards for being the most technically realistic graphics, but they somehow still find ways to make these gorgeous vistas that stand out in contrast with their dying worlds. And also, for the most part, the graphics very rarely get in the way of performance when it matters the most, and that's what I think a lot of gamers secretly value, but don't often vocalize. Now, your Armored Core might be sporting the same colors as Diva with maximum reflectiveness, but there's no escaping that we're venturing in the browns, grays, and blues of a world of steel and concrete. I do think that Armored Core 6 does a good job of taking you to different environments. For example, sometimes it's a desert, sometimes it's a monolithic wasted city in the sky, but you're going to feel the cold detachment of a dead Rubicon 3 through the visuals, and for some people it's going to be a little bit depressing, but them's the breaks. The good news is that this is a great backdrop for great explosions and all the colorful effects in combat that really punch out with the contrast. Armored Core 6 also really nails the sense of scale here. Some of these contraptions you're going to be fighting could be entire cities in another game, or something you would only see in a cutscene, but these things dwarf your already large Armored Core, letting you know that you are indeed a small fish here, and the beauty of it is that it's playable. Sound-wise, most of my focus was drawn to the sounds of the mech's boosters, the guns firing, the crack of the shoulder-mounted grenade launcher, and the burn of the thrusters as you quick boost. It's porn. Like, I don't know why I'm attracted to mechanical sounds, but most guys I know are, and this is just amazing for it. The music sits behind with building synth tracks that tell a story of foreboding and speed, but if I had to put words to it, the tracks sort of mesh into a texture that gives you this feeling, but very little of it comes to center stage except for the track Steel Haze. When this track plays, you instantly recognize the difference in tone, and it makes this mission in particular stand out as a special moment that I found to be emotionally evoking beyond what I expected in this game. Now, I've talked about missions, but I should also mention the arenas where you can duel other armored cores in simulation. You start at the lowest rank, and once you defeat everyone in your rank, you can ascend until you are the very best, like no one ever was. This is highly recommended because it gives you some cash, but also it gives you chips that can be used for OS tuning. OS tuning is interesting. You won't get enough chips to unlock everything in one playthrough, but it allows you to unlock particular active abilities and stat boosts. I think the most important one to unlock is the one that lets you turn your armored core 180 degrees instantly by pressing boost and back. But yeah, you can increase the damage of a certain type of weapon, improve the healing ability of your repair kits, allow you to start the mission overburdened and then purge weapons at will, or perhaps you just want to aim your guns manually. There's a lot to tweak here. So basically the gameplay is contained in these sorties or missions that we go on, and some of these missions have decision trees. We also have the arena. It's pretty simple. Or is it? Sometimes you will start a mission only to be ambushed by a boss. Sometimes almost nothing happens. Sorties don't always run to script. There's pros and cons to this. The pro is that it keeps things interesting. You never know quite what to expect in this crazy world of corporation and planetary liberation forces scheming against each other, or even the consequences of your untold past. The con is that you have better luck predicting the weather a month in advance than building the right armored core for the situation you might find yourself in. This might be my biggest gripe with Armored Core 6. I'm fine with unexpected situations, but imagine building a lightweight armored core that is perfectly set up to rush down and dispose of enemies, only to find that you have to fight some monstrosity of a boss with a massive shield. And this massive shield makes all of your high rate of fire kinetic weapons obsolete. Now let's imagine that you fight this boss for 20 minutes straight, only to run out of ammo at the end, and you have to restart the mission over again. It's just a bad feeling to be hard countered because you didn't know what was going to happen. You then have to go back to assembly, rebuild your armored core, and play the mission all over again to get back to the part that you were stuck on before. This can happen a few times in a playthrough, and the psychological effect is that it pushes players to play armored cores that are good at staggering bosses, rather than playing to what might be fun for the mission you were briefed on. I think this has an effect of reducing creativity rather than rewarding it, at least in the missions. Something to note is that the arena doesn't have this problem. I found myself enjoying building different kinds of armored cores for the arena much more so than for the sorties. The inability to refit your armored core mid-sortie or properly prepare for what might happen is core to how difficult you will find this game to be. As such, the first time through the game is likely to have the roughest patches. I also see this aspect of the game being the root cause for why opinions on difficulty swing so wildly online when talking about Armored Core 6. Now, Armored Core 6 features New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus. And I think it's important to note that these replays are not just raised difficulty, but New Game Plus opens up new missions, new alliances, new decision trees, new parts. And New Game Plus Plus expands on these options again and then adds another ending. I can't overstate that these are not just the barley sugars left over in your grandmother's handbag or whatever they had lying around the office. Armored Core 6 was designed and made to facilitate these multiple playthroughs. For example, in one mission, you ally with a corporation to attack the Liberation Front. In the first playthrough, you do the mission, you think nothing of it. In the second run, the Liberation Front contact you halfway through the mission and offer double what the corps are paying for you to turn on your allies and kill them instead. This opened up a relationship with the Liberation Front that then gave me new missions. But the point is that even missions you played before might pan out differently, and this is an awesome way of keeping things interesting. And yeah, man, like that's the general sense I get while playing the game. Like you keep thinking that you have an idea of the scope of what's on offer, and then a new menu opens, a new mission appears, a new part drops in the store. It's the kind of experience that makes you think, wow, this is what it's like. This is what it's like when they put everything in the game all at once. It's like all the DLC is already in the game, and it's a great feeling. But yeah, see, you thought this review was winding up, but after Chapter 2, you unlock the Nest, which then gives you access to PvP, which allows you to join and create custom matches up to 3v3. It's a fun little offering that includes things like inbuilt match replay and custom lobbies for those of you that want to test your Armored Core building theories. Well damn, a whole Armored Core 6 review without comparing it to Elden Ring or the Soul series. Unbelievable. So is Armored Core 6 a good game? Is Armored Core 6 a good game? Of course it's a good game! It's an outstanding game. If you're into mecha, then this is probably the best game out there. But even if you aren't, I think there's enough going on in the overall narrative and world to pull you in, granted that you are okay with the simplicity of the delivery. I haven't had this much fun in a mecha game in years, and even in a year full of huge releases, Armored Core 6 stands toe-to-toe with the best games to come out in recent memory. Gun to my head, and it's the Gatling, I give Armored Core 6 a 9 out of 10.